Welcome to the April 21st meeting of the Glendale City Council. May we have a roll call, please?
Council members: Raymond.
Here.
Friedman.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Weaver. Mayor Quintero.
Here. May we have your report, please?
Well, let's first begin with the flag salute, followed by the invocation.
Please rise. Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for the invocation. Tonight, as we hold our inaugural meeting with a new mayor and a new council member, let us take pause and take a moment to reflect upon the events that take place outside of these chambers that touch the lives of many of our residents and stakeholders in Glendale and throughout our great nation. Let us pray for the memory of the millions of innocent lives that were lost over 90 years ago during the Armenian genocide. May their souls find peace and their descendants justice. We pray for those brave American missionaries and officials like U.S. Ambassador Henry Morgenthau and Asa Jennings of the YMCA in Smyrna, who saved countless Armenian and Greek lives and documented what they saw happening, hoping that the horrors they took down would never be repeated. Let us pray for those who worked hard to raise awareness about human rights violations, especially genocides of past and present, to end this cycle of murder. May they be blessed in their righteous cause. We pray for peace and harmony amongst all people of the world, tonight and forever. Amen.
Mr. City Clerk, may we have your report, please?
The agenda for the April 21st, 2009 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on Thursday, April 16, 2009 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
What's next?
Next is presentation and appointments, and at 3A is the agenda preview for the meeting of April 28, 2009.
Mr. McFall.
Thank you. Excuse me. Next week, on the 28th, we'll be starting in the morning at 9:30 with a special meeting. This is, in essence, a budget study session, which time we'll be doing an overview of the current budget and also the forecast and schedule for discussion through the balance of this fiscal year prior to the adoption of the 09-10 budget. On the Glendale Housing Authority and the Redevelopment Agency meeting, other than the approval of minutes, there's no specific action items. There is, however, a joint meeting of the Glendale City Council and the Glendale Redevelopment Agency. At that joint meeting, the Director of Development Services will be presenting a master plan for the east side of Brand Boulevard, more typically known as the design for the pedestrian paseo and the alley between Brand Boulevard and Louise Street. Oh, I've just been informed that's been pulled off. My apologies. So disregard that item on the 28th. On that evening, April 28th, for the City Council meeting, under presentations and appointments, there's actually going to be a number of nominations for design review board members. There's also quite a lengthy list of items under the consent, and then 4 action items, in essence 4 action items. The first, the general manager for Glendale Water and Power is presenting a report requesting authorization to staff to propose different measures and amendments to the Glendale Municipal Code relating to water conservation. Next, the general manager of Glendale Water and Power will be presenting a report that would amend the existing contract to operate 2 demonstration wells, chromium-6 scale wells, for the removal of chromium-6. And then there will be 2 hearings. Both of these are historic listing and mills contract hearings. One is for a property at 955 Rosemont Avenue. The other second hearing is at 1117 Rossmoyne Avenue. That would be it.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Kazaki.
At 3B is a proclamation designating April 24, 2009 as Armenian Genocide Commemoration Day.
Okay, I have a proclamation. Would the committee members come to the podium, and Mr. Najarian is going to present the proclamation, perhaps give the date and time of the event. The proclamation reads as follows. Whereas on April 24, 2009, the city of Glendale and Armenians around the world will commemorate the 94th anniversary of the Armenian genocide, and whereas the Ottoman Empire initiated an 8-year reign of terror and mass executions beginning in 1915 that resulted in the death of more than 1.5 million men, women, and children of Armenian heritage. The city of Glendale has become home to one of the largest population of Armenians outside the Republic of Armenia, and many Armenian American families are the descendants of these courageous genocide survivors. Like their family members before them, the Armenian American community has flourished and greatly enriched our city through contributions in business, arts, culture, education, and government. We appreciate the efforts of the many community volunteers that organize the city's annual Armenian Genocide commemorative events, and we recognize the efforts of the Glendale Unified School District, the Glendale Community College, in educating our youth not only about the Armenian Genocide, but all of man's inhumanities to man. In the words of the historian George Santayana, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Therefore, I, Frank Quintero, Mayor of the City of Glendale, proclaim April 24, 2009 as Armenian Genocide Commemoration Day and invite all members of the community to participate in the annual Armenian Genocide commemorative event. Mr. Najarian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to present these to the following individuals, to Leonard Manukian, and to Ara Aharonyan. Rita. Prettier than you. Or Chris. Sarvanyan. Thank you. And Mr. Mayor, as you mentioned, that we do have the annual commemorative event on April 24th. That's this Friday, and it's going to take place at the Alex Theater at 7 p.m. Tickets are available at the Alex Theater box office. They are free. However, there's a maximum of 4 tickets per each person, each individual that presents himself or herself. It's going to be I think a very good event this year. We have a keynote speaker of Mark Arax, formerly with the LA Times. We are going to have Gor Mkhitaryan, guitarist. We're going to have Abstract 3, a jazz trio. And we're going to have a performance with the Glendale High School Choir. And Mr. Mayor, you will be there also, just to put it on your agenda. 7 p.m., we plan on starting it very promptly. We don't want to delay it. People may have other events to go to that evening. Doors will open at 6:15. Correct. 6:15, and it should be a wonderful commemorative event, and I urge everyone to take time out of their busy schedule to attend. And if I've forgotten anything, Zizet Ayad, who is a very involved in the coordination of all the efforts, can fill in any gaps. Did I say everything?
Just one more item to bring up. The parking is free at the Orange Street Garage, and so feel free, anybody that would attend the event, to park at the Orange Street Garage for free. I also want to thank our sponsors. We've had great sponsorship from our community. St. Mary's Church, ARS, and ACF have sponsored the event. Porta's Bakery. A lot of small organizations have also have given us in-kind contribution with advertisements and media promotions for the event. So I thank all of them and the committee for participating in this really great event that we put on every year, and hope that the public can come out and join us for that event. Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, if you'll permit, I'd like the recipients of your proclamation to introduce themselves and say a few words. In any order. Let's start with Chris.
Good morning, Council. Evening. My name is Chris Garsvani, and I'm representing the Armenian Council of America. And we've worked with a number of you through the years, and I'd like to just thank you for supporting all of our endeavors and helping us continue our task. Thank you.
Good evening, council members and city staff. I'm Rita Aharonyan on behalf of the Armenian Rights Council of America. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the council members who were re-elected and newly elected to council and sworn in yesterday. Second, I'd like to thank the City of Glendale and the City Council. Since 2001, you have adopted the week of April 24th as a week of remembrance. Thank you. As we all know, the lack of remembrance of any genocide or any massacre of any race is to allow it to happen again. So I'd like to thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Leonard Minukin, and I represent the ANC. I would like to thank the city and the city staff represented by Ms. Mullins, especially for all their efforts in this regard. I think the work that they have done is exemplary, and I think we should all be grateful to have such great city staff. And I want to thank you for your leadership that you've shown in this regard. Thank you very much.
Okay, then I want to
conclude our presentation.
I want to thank the committee members who year after year work at this program. It's not easy to put together, and they always do a spectacular job. So thank you very much on behalf of the City Council. What's next, Mr. Clerk?
Next is City Council and staff comments.
Any comments? I'll start with Mr. Najarian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to let the public know that the famed or infamous Flower Street crossing has been completed. It is the culmination of years of work on the part of the city, Metrolink, MTA, the Union Pacific Railroad. Did I forget anyone? The California Public Utilities Commission, to design, install, and construct an at-grade crossing at Flower Street. It is the state-of-the-art crossing in Southern California, so much so that the entirety of the Orange County crossings are modeling themselves after the Glendale crossing. It is the state-of-the-art, including dual quad gates, a center median, and technology called advanced preemption, which is the latest design to make sure that vehicles do not get trapped at or near the crossing. This was not dedicated with a lot of fanfare, out of respect and sensitivity to some of the opinions and opposition of the Pelanconi Park Estates Homeowners Association. But nevertheless, it is open, it is operating, and the entire concept is that it will be another place for vehicles to cross into the GC3 complex and thereby make it safer for all the vehicles who are coming through. The city is continuing to work on the other crossings from that one on south to make sure they are state-of-the-art. And as we mentioned before, it's our intention to get them all to that level of safety so we can institute a quiet zone, so those trains, Metrolink, et cetera, don't have to blast their loud horns as they approach those crossings. And it was funded in part by the MTA. I think it was over $1 million, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, along with funds from the city of Glendale. It was a joint cooperative effort in that regard. So in case you're driving by Flower Street and San Fernando, what you're going to be looking at is the state-of-the-art for at-grade crossings for railroad tracks. So thank you to Steve Zern and our legal staff and Jim Starbird and everyone else who made it possible.
Now, that doesn't mean we're encouraging people to go cross the railroad tracks, right, Mr. Najarian?
Only if you have to. We want to reduce traffic, so don't take any unnecessary trips. But
right. Okay. She has something. Do you have any comments before? Ms. Friedman.
I have a few comments. First, I had the pleasure on Saturday of attending Glendale's first history bike ride, and it was a wonderful event. We had about 65 people come out and bike from 10 in the morning until about 3:45 all around Glendale to all kinds of historic landmarks around the city. And some cars were maybe confused to see such a huge pack of bikers on the road, but I'm happy to report that everybody was well behaved, the cars were well behaved, and what was so surprising to me and wonderful to see was the amount of pedestrians and people come out of apartments and give us the thumbs up signal and say that they were thrilled to see bikes on the road. So I just wanted to have Colin Bogart come up and just introduce the event very quickly and give us a little thumbnail of it. And this was put together by Colin and Scott Lowe from the Glendale Historic Society.
Mayor Quintero, Council, City staff, good evening. My name is Colin Bogart, and please excuse my casual attire. I just found out that I was speaking about 10 minutes ago. So now you know exactly what I'm wearing on my bike ride home tonight. As Ms. Friedman said, we had about 65 riders who came out for the ride. We met at the train station in the morning. We had riders who were residents of Glendale, Burbank, and Pasadena. And I know of at least one person who showed up for the ride who rode his bike from Venice Beach to join us for the ride on Saturday. It really was a lot of fun. Everybody had a great time. The Glendale Historical Society did a great job of talking about each place that we visited, and they even they were wonderful in that they provided us with bottled water at Brand Park, which was much needed after climbing up that hill. And it was getting warmer and warmer that day, although thankfully it wasn't anything like today and yesterday. Probably one of my favorite parts of the ride was at the Grand Central Air Terminal. We had one rider step up and start telling us stories about how he was learning to fly a plane at the airport when he was 17 years old. And then people just started asking him questions, and he was just rattling off the answers, and that was a lot of fun. So all in all, I think it was a great day, a very successful event. And since then, I've already had people asking me, when's the next ride? Where are we going? What's happening? So stay tuned.
Thank you.
All right. Very good. Thank you very much. Any other comments? Okay. Mr. Starbird.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. As you know, for the past several months, we've been engaged in an effort to recruit a new Director of Information Services. That has involved literally a national recruitment, a screening of numerous applications, an evaluation by two different appraisal panels, and then, of course, interview and background checks. I'm here to report that we've had a very good result of that and are very pleased to bring to you and introduce a gentleman to start on June 9th as Glendale's new Director of Information Services, subject to your approval, Ed Frega. Ed, would you come forward for just a minute? Let people see you. Ed has over 35 years of experience in the information technology field, having worked in both the public and the private sector, about 15 years with the cities of Pasadena and Beverly Hills, and then a considerable amount of time with the Warner Group and the Gartner Group, probably the foremost consulting firm in this field in the United States. Mr. Frega has a bachelor's degree in mathematics from the University of Santa Clara, a master's degree in public administration from USC, and a master's degree in business from Pepperdine. He, as you can see, has tremendous credentials. He's published numerous articles. He is, I believe, the right person at the right time for Glendale. And fortunately for us, he is a resident of Topanga with his wife, although he has for the last several years worked in New York, where he has headed up the team that has been evaluating and revamping the election system for the state of New York. We're very fortunate to have Ed joining our team, and with that, as charged by our charter, the city manager appoints the various department heads of the city, subject to the city council's approval. So with that, I would request your approval of his appointment.
Okay, let me start by saying that we had the opportunity to interview Mr. Fraga, and I thought it was an excellent choice. He's got incredible background, and I'm particularly struck by all of the ideas that he immediately talked about pertaining to trying to green the city of Glendale, both at water and power and within our other divisions. I'm very impressed with Mr. Fraga. Any other comments? No? Well then, without any further ado, Ms. Friedman, I believe you.
I would like to move that pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.1A5, the selection by the City Manager of Edward Fraga as the Director of Information Services for the City of Glendale is hereby approved pursuant to Glendale Charter, Article 6, Section 4, and further that a written copy of the motion be transcribed, certified, and delivered by the City Clerk to the Office of the Civil Service Commission of the City of Glendale as and for the written statement required by Article 24, thank you, Section 5, Subsection 2 of the Charter.
Have a second.
I'll second it.
Okay. I'll bet this is the first time that your employment led to that public pronouncement. If there aren't any further comments, roll call, please.
Council members Draymond,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver, Mayor Quintero.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Ed, welcome to Glendale.
Thank you.
Next, please.
Next is consent items following our routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so before motion is proposed, and we do have 2 cards submitted for items on this consent calendar.
I have a card to pull 5B and 5E.
All right. And, Mr. Mayor, I will move the consent items with the exception of 5B and 5E, did you say? 5B and
I got
5E.
it.
I'll second that.
Roll call.
Council members Draymond,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver, Mayor Quintero.
Yes. Would you read 5B into the record, please?
5B is Director of Public Works regarding Colorado Street Improvement Project, Plan number 1-2903, 4-596, 49-129, 49-138, 50-494, 50-495, 50496, 71-107, and 6449, spec number 3356. B1 is a resolution adopting plans and specs and directing the city clerk to advertise for bids.
Mr. Starbird.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, you might want to call on the speaker to see purpose for pulling.
No report or...
Unless you have questions for us, this is merely plans and specifications for street improvements on Colorado as described in the staff report.
The card is Nancy Kent.
My name's Nancy Kent, resident of Southeast Glendale, and I would first like to congratulate Council members Friedman and Quintero and Najarian on your election, and congratulations to Mayor Quintero on being elected mayor last night. That's great. Back to Colorado Street. I noticed in the staff report that Colorado Street between Brand and Glendale Avenue is to be widened 4 feet on each side, and also that we're getting one more traffic lane in each direction. So am I correct that that means narrower lanes on that stretch of Colorado? Assuming that it does, I guess that's the wave of the future. This is on the consent calendar, but I thought it would be good to notify people that this is coming up so that once we see construction starting, we'll know to avoid Colorado for a while, which I already avoid usually. Last point is I look forward to seeing more bike lanes. I do not think bike lanes are part of this project on Colorado, but I hope to see some markings on other streets soon to give more accommodations to bike riders. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a response, Mr. Smith?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, there is a widening of the street, 4 feet on each side, and also this particular street has what is called the continuous left and right or left turn island, so you can, as you go down the middle, turn left in either direction. That will be narrowed as well, so the lane width will remain standard. I believe this is 12 feet, so that the lanes will not be decreased. At the same time, there's been a question before about, will this mean the sidewalks are going to be narrowed, and that's the answer to that is no. In fact, they're going to be expanded. Right now, our sidewalks run in that area with parkways between 5 and 7 feet. We're going to standardize them all at 8 feet. So in addition to that, we're putting in pedestrian lighting and some other amenities on that stretch. This stretch of Colorado will match up with the stretch between Brandon Central that was improved as part of the Americana project. As far as bike lanes go, this street is one we would probably look to more in the future. It's a major arterial, but we are working on a east-west bike path or bike way south of Colorado on Maple, and also as a secondary point north on Wilson. So we are developing full east-west bikeways as well.
About street trees.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, our intent is to carry the street tree theme from the eastern part of Colorado up, so it'll be Brisbane box trees primarily, with accent trees of aristocrats and palms, the Canary Island date palms.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Draymond.
Mr. Mayor, I will move 5B.
I have a question. I'll be happy to second that. Are we going to continue that lovely theme of rust-colored poles westward?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Najarian, no. The color here will be Glendale bronze, which is more consistent with what you see on Brand Boulevard. It's a brown shade. So no, we aren't bringing the Colorado orange up.
Orange. Okay. Thank you.
Known as primer.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Roll call, please.
Councilmembers Draymond,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver, Mayor Quintero.
Yes. 5E, please.
5E is Director of Human Resources regarding Horizon Health contract renewal. At E1 is motion renewing Employee Assistance Program, EAP contract for 5 years, May 1, 2009 to April 30, 2014.
I have one card. Herbert Milano.
Good evening. My name is Herbert Milano, Mayor Quintero, council members. I want to address briefly the Employee Assistance Program. In particular, I think this is a program that assists the general city employees significantly. Not speaking here in opposition to this program, but rather in the way that it is calculated. For a fairly long period of time, I have been asking for full-time equivalent employees. Many of the financial reports in Glendale provide us with full-time employees, which means salaried and hourly. Sometimes we get hourly employees only, sometimes we get partial information, but never do we get to actually see a number that we could use it to gauge the number of employees in Glendale from year to year. It is one of the difficulties in trying to do a proper analysis of the finances and the growth of employment of the employees in the city of Glendale. This whole concept of having 8 visits per employee for different types of assistance, being personal, health, psychological, and other, I think is a wonderful way of ensuring that employees not only remain psychologically and healthy in many other ways, but I think that we need to know of these employees if part-time employees are being afforded the same service, and if so, how many of these are part-time employees, how many of these are full-time, and again, how many are full-time equivalent. I think that if the city provides us with full-time equivalent employees, as many and most cities provide, it will help us significantly in assessing the financial cost of many programs. Thank you very much.
Mr. Starbird.
Mr. Mayor, I'll let Mr. Doyle respond to the question about the employees who are eligible. I will note that in the upcoming year's budget, we will have all positions hourly and full-time reflected as full-time equivalents. Matt, the other question?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, this employee assistance program is available both to salaried and hourly employees. And the figure addressed there is one that has been used the past couple of years as an average of our total employment pool, including both hourly and salaried. The hourly figure fluctuates on a seasonal capacity. In the summertime, we staff up in some areas, and it goes down other times of the year. So the 2150 figure is somewhat of an average of that. And again, this program is available to our hourlies. In some cases, since hourlies are not afforded medical benefits here, in some cases this is one of their few avenues for support and assistance in these areas. So,
any other questions? Do I have a motion?
Yes.
I'll move it.
I'll second the item.
Roll call, please.
Councilmembers Draymond,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver, Mayor Quintero.
Yes. Next, please.
6 is oral communications. Discussion is limited time, is not part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Members of council may respond or question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The city manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for investigation and report.
Okay, I'm going to keep the same procedures that we used last year. So we'll have presentations and so forth, and announcements and oral communications will be moved to the end of the agenda. Start with Leon Mayer.
Evening, Mayor Quintero, members of the council, Ms. Friedman. My name is Leon Mayer. I'm here as a member of the Friends of the Glendale Public Library and chairman of the Author, Artist, and Friends series. We've just got through a very interesting evening last Thursday with Cloris Leachman, Academy Award winner, Rose Bowl Marshal, Grand Marshal, and we've had, this year we had Ernest Borgnine, we've had Ed Begley, and we now have coming up on May 19th, Robert Scheer. May 19th, 7 o'clock, Thursday at the library. Our events are free, and he'll talk about his book, The Pornography of Power. Now, I'm not going to speak at length tonight about Mr. Scheer, because that would take all night to talk about him. But I'd like to point out a few salient points that might be of interest to the audience and to the members of the council. And I have flyers that I can pass out to the audience after, and I have flyers for the already been passed out to you. Mr. Scheer has been a war correspondent, journalist since 1964 when he covered the Vietnam War. Thereafter, he became a nationally known journalist, and he wrote columns on issues like the Vietnam War, the Iraq War, military issues, Soviet Union issues, a multitude of issues, and his interviews were nationally known and are well known. In addition to that, he interviewed presidents. He interviewed every president from Nixon to Clinton, and he was in the meantime associated with the Los Angeles Times, first of all as a syndicated columnist, or a correspondence for them from 1973 to 1976 to 1993, and then he had a nationally syndicated column from 1993 to 2005. His book, The Pornography of Power, should be of great interest to a lot of people from various points of view. And currently he's at the Annenberg School of Journalism and Communication at USC. So we promise you another interesting evening, May 21st at the library, 7 o'clock. Parking is free and validated, and admission is free. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next is Manuel Gonzalez from Glendale Adventist.
Good evening. First, thank you and welcome to all the newly elected officials. Again, my name is Manuel Gonzalez. I'm here representing Glendale Adventist Medical Center, both the Cancer Center and the Therapy and Wellness Center, which provides all the physical and occupational therapy services for the area. What I'm going to be discussing, as some of you guys probably have already heard about it, who were involved with it last year, is the annual garden tour. This is our second annual garden tour. Last year's was very, very successful, and by which we were able to set up programs specifically designed for members of our community that are cancer survivors. And not only is the program designed specifically for them, but they're also for their family members as well. The tour itself is going to take place on Sunday, May 3rd, from 10:30 to 4 o'clock. And essentially, it starts at 2211 Bonita Drive in Glendale, and it's a guided tour through some of the local homes and their gardens. As you guys already know or probably familiar with, cancer treatment is very, very expensive, and this is a way that the hospital, along with the community, can provide services that are free of charge, absolutely free of charge, to those people that are survivors of cancer. And so for many of you that have family or friends or themselves are a survivor, I encourage you guys to kind of spread the word, and hopefully you guys will help us out like you did last year. Ways to get involved, obviously by purchasing the tickets. There are raffles available. You can buy advertisements as well. Since the program's inception in 2008, we've been able to help over 200 patients or clients into our system, which is a very good number. And as the program continues to grow and becomes more popular, those numbers are expected to grow, therefore needing the added funding that is required to maintain those programs. That's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions or concerns, the contact number is 323-255-5409, and the contact person is Diana. She's very lovely. She's actually going to be at the facility as well. And I will entertain your questions now. If not, any questions, concerns?
You guys have a question? Are you advertising on Channel 6? Or?
I have some information here that I was given. Perhaps I can pass this out. You're very welcome.
The advertisements that the speaker spoke of are in the brochure. That's the ticket that people use on the self-guided tour. And so I encourage members of the community who have businesses. It's not a very expensive item, and you can have a business card or a full-page ad in the brochure, and all of the money goes right into the cancer programs.
Okay, and the date is Sunday, May 3rd, from 10:30 to 4 p.m.
Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Next, please.
Was it where the final announcement card? Okay. Next is action items. At 8A is Director of Human Resources. Regarding amendment to City GMA Memorandum of Understanding. At 8A is a resolution amending and extending City GMA Memorandum of Understanding, Amendment Number 4.
Mr. Starbird.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, again to Matt Doyle for an explanation of this item.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the item before you is an amendment to our Memorandum of Understanding between the City of Glendale and the Glendale Management Association. This amendment is the culmination of several months of meet and confer over some concessions being addressed to deal with the current budget situation. There are two parts to this amendment. Primarily, one involves the fire sworn managers who are part of the Glendale Management Association, and the other involves the general non-sworn managers. In both cases, each of these groups is making some form of a concession in salaries and in various ways. The fire sworn managers are dealing with a foregoing of a cost of living increase that they were supposed to receive July 1st of 2009. They were, per their existing contract, they were to receive a cost of living based on the Consumer Price Index of a minimum of 2.5% to a maximum of 4.5%. They have, on meeting and conferring with the city, offered to give up that cost of living increase for July 1st of 2009, and in addition to that, they've agreed to take a no increase in July 1st of 2010, and extend their current contract for an additional 2 years. And this cost of living increase that was to have taken effect July 1st, 2009, will in turn take effect in 2011. So basically, it's pushing that cost of living 2 additional years.
Mr. Starbird.
Mr. Mayor, quick editorial comment. I want to commend the representatives of both the Fire Management Group and the General Services Management Group. These adjustments previously contracted for and agreed to on the general GMA side would have affected the neighborhood of almost 100 people from adjustments ranging from less than 1% to adjustments over 3%. For these folks, no small amount of sacrifice, frankly. And the same for the fire managers who followed suit with the Fire Association, I think showing a tremendous sense of leadership and commitment to joining with the city and partnering in looking for ways to address the downturn, economize wherever possible. So I think they should be commended for the leadership and commitment and sacrifice that they're showing here.
Any other comments? Okay, I have one card. Herbert Milano.
Mayor Quintero, members of the City Council, my name is Herbert Milano. These are hard economic times that demand that we have a shared sacrifice. For those of us who do not work for government, we're finding that there's a very high unemployment, now 10% in the county. We have lost medical benefits. We have lost pensions. And oftentimes the public comes to you telling you and reminding you that if we are truly going to have a shared sacrifice, that it should show up someplace. Hopefully at the end of the evaluation of the budget, and as we take a look at the overall payroll. The amendment to the GMA, the Memorandum of Understanding, I believe should be continued until the month of June for several reasons. This amendment extends the city's GMA labor agreement for another 2 years, effectively taking the burden of compensation and benefits, the discussion, out of the budget discussions which begin next week. As most of you know, the city's payroll account for roughly 80%, if not more, of the overall budget. So if these agreements are basically taken out through a 2-year extension, then we're only going to have budget discussions on 20% of the expenditures. And I don't think that is right. I think that everything should be open to discussion during the budget sessions so that we can get a full assessment of what these MOUs really stand. The GMA comprises 60% of the overall payroll budget. In other words, the impact overall that it has on the payroll should be fairly significant for us not to consider evaluating this as part of the overall city's budget. You cannot have an adequate discussion, of the city's budget without discussing it for 6 to 8 weeks and include these particular agreements as part of that. The way that I see it, the MOU is a very complex document, and it requires adequate public discussion, and it is critical that a new council member, Ms. Friedman, have an opportunity to study it in the context of the budget. I think that making a decision on this today and approving it today will deprive her of the full study that she would need to have for you to make an adequate assessment of the full impact. This particular cost of living adjustment or the giving up of the cost of living is a conditional offer being given to you by the Glendale Firefighters Association. And because it is conditional, we should know the full impact overall that it would have at the tail end of those conditions. So it is my suggestion that in order to provide transparency and fairness and a full discussion of the city's budget, that the MOU agreement should not be approved until the month of June, after adequate discussion of all of the city's needs have an opportunity to be vetted and assessed. Thank you very much.
Any comments, Ms. Starber?
Mr. Mayor, a quick one here. First off, as it relates to the general management group and the market adjustments, this city was obligated to implement these increases March 1. If we deferred this, you'd have to implement it, and it would cost us roughly $106,000 annually. They've said they'll forego it. It's not conditional. They'll forego it. I don't know what more could be possibly asked for of those 97 managers who would have gotten an increase March 1 and would have been real dollars in their pocket, except that they won't get that now. There was nothing else given up other than their recognition that in these times, even though this had been agreed to in a contract signed 2 to 3 years ago, they would forego this. No conditions attached, no strings attached. With respect to the fire group, although a very small number of people, no less significant for them. And they've said, we'll forego it for 2 years. That doesn't limit your ability to have a complete discussion about salaries, wages, benefits, any other cost of our personnel as part of your budget discussions. But in the absence of them taking this action, you would have been obligated to have implemented these increases for the general managers over a month and a half ago. Instead, you won't have to, and the city will save almost $106,000 in 12 months. And with respect to fire, you'll save somewhere between $41,000 and $75,000, with no limitations on the city's ability to discuss wages, hours, other conditions of employment, or other costs of personnel connected to the budget. I don't know how much simpler you can get than that.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move it, Mr. Mayor.
A second.
8A1.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmembers Draymond,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver, Mayor Quintero.
Yes. Next, please.
At 8B is General Manager of Glendale Water and Power. This is continued from April 14, 2009, regarding request for proposal RFP to engineer, procure, and construct 69-12 kilowatt substation at Glorietta substation site. At B1 is a resolution approving a request for proposal and authorizing the General Manager of GWP to obtain proposals from pre-qualified contractors.
Mr. Starbird.
Yes, Mr. Glenn Steiger, General Manager.
Good evening, Mayor Quintero and members of the City Council. We are proposing to reconstruct the Glorietta substation. Back in March, you authorized GWP to pre-qualify vendors so that we could conduct a pre-qualified RFP process. So we're coming back to you tonight for that RFP process. We did do the pre-qualifications, and we looked at 7 vendors and qualified 4. So we are proposing to go out for bids to the 4 contractors.
Any questions?
No questions. I was just going to inquire if you had any speaker cards. If not, I was going to move the item.
No, I don't. I do have some questions. Go ahead.
I do. Mr. Steiger, okay, there's a lot of KVs here and a lot of step downs and all that. Basically, what you're doing is you're proposing to set the specs and put out to bid the complete rebuilding and refurbishing of the Glorietta substation. The Glorietta substation can provide, once completed, will provide a backup to the Montrose area of Glendale and perhaps some areas south of Montrose as well.
That is correct.
And it's going to provide a more reliable service, and because the voltage is going to be higher, it's going to provide some efficiencies in the distribution. Am I correct in that?
That is correct. What we're doing, the City of Glendale currently has 2 distribution voltages, 4 kV, that's what the kV is, and 12, that's 1,000 volts. Our ultimate goal is to standardize the entire city at 12,000 volts. Glorietta currently serves that distribution area at 4,000. We need to be able to back up the Montrose substation. Montrose substation is the only substation in northeast Glendale, and should we have a catastrophic failure at Montrose, there is currently no backup that would be able to back it up at that voltage level at 12,000 volts. So this will provide the backup. This will also increase the capacity, increase the reliability, be a much lower profile substation, so it'll have a much better look in the neighborhood, and of course increase the life. So there are many, many benefits to what we're doing.
So it says the cost is $11 million. How are we paying for that?
It's budgeted. We have the capital dollars. If you recall, we went out for bonding last year, and that was part of it.
We're bonding it.
That's correct.
So with this bond money, we're putting infrastructure in the ground today, and we'll be paying that back over a course of 30 years.
Correct.
Now, can't we wait 30 years till we have all the money in our pool of money? I'm sorry. I'm sort of back in my campaign mode, and I feel like I'm debating you. But but that certainly would be infeasible, would it not, to wait 30 years or any extensive period of time till we collect the $11 million to put it in the community?
That is correct. What we're doing is increasing reliability. And if you go back just a few years ago, you may recall that the reliability here in Glendale was less than favorable. Over the last few years, GWP has made a very concerted effort to increase reliability by rebuilding much of the infrastructure, including the distribution lines. And in that regard, the distribution lines in the Glorietta area, the poles and wires, have already been rebuilt to accept the higher voltage levels. However, they're operating at a lower voltage level right now because the substation itself doesn't have the higher voltage level.
It's only at 4,000 currently. It's going to be boosted to 12,000.
That is correct.
As you stated.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you very much for explaining that.
I have a question, Mr. Steiger, a couple of questions. I assume, keeping with your green tie and green outfit today, that this substation, you're going to be looking for greening of whatever equipment we buy and so forth.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
In fact, everything we do at this point looks towards green, looks towards reducing our carbon footprint. We've made an extra effort towards that, yes.
And how about American manufacturers, General Electric or whoever?
We make every effort to use American manufacturers where feasible, yes.
Mr. Starber.
Mr. Mayor, this is one of those upgrades that will benefit both the north and the south parts of Glendale at the same time, as noted in the staff report. In addition to getting this substation at 12 kV, this substation serves as a backup to Montrose substation, which serves the north part of the city. It also relieves the Rossmoyne substation, which right now is being very heavily used for feeding power to the south part of Glendale. It might also be useful to note that we're using state-of-the-art technology gas-insulated systems, so that the previous racks that you would see at a substation are now significantly minimized, the profiles lowered, and there have been questions raised about the use of what's called GIS technology. And in this substation, they'll be using state-of-the-art gas insulation, which significantly lowers the profile and reduces the level of risk at a substation like this.
And increases the life. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Steiger. Do I have a motion?
Yes, I'll move 8B, and just for clarification, because we keep sort of going around and around and around the actual service area. It's not just kind of around Montrose, the north part of the city. It's basically all of La Crescenta, all of the La Crescenta Annex, Verdugo City, Montrose, all of the city areas there. Correct?
It will back that up. Yes, that's correct.
Exactly. So, I mean, it is the entire, basically, Glendale portion of the Crescenta Valley that is being backed up. It's being served by the Montrose substation.
Correct.
It's being backed up. Okay.
Second. Roll call, please.
Council members: Raymond?
Yes.
Friedman? Yes. Najarian?
Yes.
Weaver? Mayor Quintero?
Yes. Next.
Thank you.
At 8C is Director of Public Works regarding bail amounts related to parking violations. At C1 is a resolution directing staff to increase the bail schedule fines in the city of Glendale and rescinding resolution number 04-72.
Starber.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I will ask Lieutenant Carl Povolitis, who supervises, among other things, supervises the parking enforcement operation, to give you a brief overview on this.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Carl Povolitis with the police department. Staff comes before you tonight to recommend an adjustment in the parking bail rates. Actually, the last time that we had requested an adjustment goes back, it actually predates my service in the Traffic Bureau, to May of 2004, at which time the bail rates were actually set based on the comparison cities at about the 75th percentile. And we generally try to review these every couple of years to see how we are based on our comparison cities and whether or not an adjustment would be recommended. In this case, we are recommending an adjustment, as most of our fines are at or have fallen below or are right in the average area of our comparison cities. Added to that, as of January of this year, SB 1407 increased a fee that the state is now collecting from the city to $4.50. And as of January 1, in every parking ticket, that fee is due and payable from the city of Glendale to the state of California for construction funds. So in reality, when you now total up what we owe on every parking ticket, about $9.50 of every parking citation we write is not retained by the City of Glendale does not support the parking enforcement operation. It is actually transferred to the State of California for other purposes. So when we reviewed this, what we did is we took a look at it's been 5 years since we've last done this. So looking at meanwhile, our costs have increased. So what we did is we looked at raising this by approximately CPI with the intent of keeping us not only in the same area as our comparison cities, but also making sure that the parking citations continue to have a deterrent effect as they're primarily intended. I can say anecdotally with a couple of our fines, especially with those of oversized vehicles, some of my staff have reported to me that some of the drivers have found it easier, more cost-effective, if you will, to accept the parking citation than to park the vehicle off the street. And so we're not having the desired impact of keeping the large and mostly tractor trailers and trailers off of, in some cases, our residential streets, because in some cases it's actually just more cost-effective for them to do that. The methodology we used is that we took all of our parking fines, we examined what a 10% increase would do to those. If we were at or slightly above the average when we made that adjustment, we kept that in play. If we were way below the average, then we took what the average was of the comparison cities and recommended that you increase it to the average, and then we added the $4.50, which in most cases were provided to $5 to cover the pass-through cost of SB 1407. In essence, is that the city would probably net approximately $360,000 based on our past parking enforcement activity. So that's sort of where we stand with the issue and why we're recommending the increase. As I said, parking enforcement keeps several people fairly busy. It's very important to a lot of the merchants who will routinely call that if we're not checking meters in time zones, that's very important that they be able to turn their businesses. But we also don't want to become relatively attractive to our neighboring cities where we have oversized vehicles and such here. So with that, we would be recommending that you make bail adjustments of approximately 10% plus the pass-through of the SB 1407 fees.
Any comments or questions?
I have a question. I thought I was familiar with all of these violations, but removal of chalk caught me. So is that when they go around and mark your tire for the time period parking?
Yeah, that's one of those. If you notice, there's only one other city that has it. But yes, that is one method that we can use to mark that, and could be problematic for us if you have somebody removing the chalk so you can't enforce the time zones. To be perfectly honest, I can't really remember the last time we've probably written one of those. That is almost in one sense. And I'm going to say we won't use it because some of the older techniques can still be effective, but modern technology has caught up with the world of parking enforcement well, and we use some other techniques for marking vehicles.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to be taking cards at the beginning of these items, not in the middle. So, any other comments?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, just to point out and add to something Lieutenant Povolitis said, and that's the SB 1407 fees. Those are for courthouse construction, and I should tell you that the city manager and I had a meeting recently with our county representatives. Glendale is very high on the list of the Judicial Council for construction of a new courthouse. It looks very promising that may be occurring in the near term. And it's predominantly as a result of the fees raised by the SB 1407 surcharge.
I'll move the item, Mr. Mayor, if you're so inclined to take it at this point.
I'll second it.
Okay. I said I'll be taking it at the beginning. No. Okay, well, the attorney, in the future, if you want to speak on an item, you're going to turn an item in the beginning, not during the presentation. Since I didn't give fair warning, as the city attorney mentions, then Mr. Milano, you'll have 3 minutes. And you're not filling out the address, Mr. Milano, so...
I am not required to give the address, by the way, Mayor Quintero. I think that what we have experienced right now is a potential violation of the Brown Act. The state of California law allows me to come in to speak on any particular item that is on the agenda, and I see your attempts to limit public discussion on a very relevant issue very disheartening, Mr. Quintero.
I'm going to, once again, I repeat, when you want to speak on an item, fill out a card ahead of time, and I'll let you speak.
oftentimes the issues that are being brought up by one of the staff members induces us to come in and basically express our opinion with regard to certain issues. There's a significant tie between the increasing city cost of payroll and benefits and the need to raise revenues in many different ways. And I will tell you the following, that given the dire needs of many of the residents, especially south of the 134, that the current charges for these various different penalties are hitting them even more so than before because there's less income that they have around. I can tell you that one of the biggest problems that I have is the fact that on Tuesdays when we have our street sweeping, every Tuesday we will actually have tickets being generated or being given to those individuals who oftentimes forget to move their car, but yet the street sweeping only occurs twice a month. In parts of last year, we did not have street sweeping for a whole month. And on a couple of occasions, it was only once during the whole month. So here we have, on a week-to-week, individuals being penalized in order to create a disincentive so they can move their cars on those days, but yet the streets are not being swept. And I think that there's a little bit of injustice in that whole concept. We also have the additional problem that during many years, this City Council has approved a significant number of variances with regard to buildings, apartment buildings, that require fewer parking spaces. And that has created by now a significant constraint in people trying to find a place to park, especially on days of street sweeping. It's incredibly difficult to do so. We also find another situation where on the very large alleys between the major streets, tenants need to move their cars into those areas, oftentimes away so that it allows other traffic to come through, but then they are ticketed for parking on those alleys. I can take you and provide with you pictures of the significant burden that these particular changes with regard to the densities and the lack of sufficient parking and how it's impacting the neighborhoods and many of the residents. Many of my tenants have talked to me to complain about how difficult it is for them to find adequate parking and the eventual penalties that they have to basically are submitted to, they have to submit to. I would love to see records and information with regard to the total revenues that are being generated out of these particular penalties, especially in the area south of the 134. I think these increases are unfair, and I think it needs a review. Thank you very much.
Okay, and Mr. Milano, I would like to remind you that you are the owner of an apartment building that just a couple of months ago you mentioned had inadequate parking. I remember specifically you mentioned that it had. No, you're not going to speak. You can have a seat. You had your minute. Have a seat. Are you going to sit down or?
Well, this is an item that pertains to discussion. It's not oral communications.
Have a seat. I'm speaking.
This isn't a debate.
Have a seat. You had your say. I want to remind you that you are the landlord, the owner of an apartment building that just a few months ago you said had inadequate parking. As I drive down your street, I notice that your apartment building, one of the larger ones on the street, has numerous issues concerning parking, the way it's angled in and so forth, but here you are complaining to us about something where you've basically been living and have invested your money in over the years. So I just wanted to point that out. You're constantly pointing things out to us, so just want to point out to you, if there are issues in this city pertaining to parking and overdevelopment, you're the owner. You own that building. That's where you chose to invest your money. Just wanted to point that out to you. Have a motion and a second, right?
There is not a second yet.
Nope.
I will second the motion, unless I made the motion. I don't recall.
No, it was made by Councilmember Najarian.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Council members Draymond?
Yes.
Friedman?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Weaver? Mayor Quintero?
Yes. Next, please.
Next, we return to oral communication.
Okay. Have it. Okay.
Too late, Margaret.
Start with Tammy Relea and Lawrence Calfian.
Up to 5 minutes now?
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening, members of council. First of all, I'd like to say I really appreciate the opportunity to speak. I am here today on behalf of the Northwest Glendale Homeowners Association because we have received numerous inquiries about a project located at 503 West Kenneth Road, located on the northwest corner. If you've driven by that property, you will know that it's a very prominent corner, and for many of us that live in the neighborhood, we consider it a landmark location. After reviewing the DRB minutes, the actual videos, following up with staff reports and documents, there appears to be some inconsistencies from the very beginning, which is confusing and quite frustrating to the community. So since I don't have a lot of time to go into the detail, I did prepare a summary which I'd like to pass out to you of the project so that hopefully you can follow me with regards to some of the concerns we have with this. So I'll wait till everybody gets the handout so I don't lose you, and hopefully I don't lose my time. Thank you. Prior to the first DRB meeting, you will notice that at some point the applicants met with the planning staff. And it was because the applicant had applied for a 305 square foot addition to an existing 2,610 square foot house and a 470 square foot attached garage. In that staff report, you will notice that it was considered a modest addition, even though it also included a complete redesign of the house from a colonial to the Mediterranean. In fact, the staff report recommended that the Mediterranean style is well designed. And it even noted that the landscaping will be unchanged. New landscaping plans submitted to complement construction. And if I might digress just a little bit, we just found out today that the original plans were submitted on March 19th. And when we looked at those original plans that was approved, there were no changes to the exterior of the project. There was only going to be one window change to be removed on the east side. So whatever happened between the original plan, the meeting with the applicants, it's very fuzzy and unclear. Now I bring you to the first DRB meeting. There's a whole different perception about the project when it got submitted. As you can see by some of the comments, it was a very poor design. The house falls way short. Already there was concerns that significant conditions were being left at the staff level. As you can see, the project was returned for redesign with 9 significant conditions. At the second DRB meeting, it appears that the applicant did not comply with all the conditions. Staff still considered this project a modest addition. In fact, one commissioner also had some concerns about the windows being modified. Building and Safety said that they were not, and he wanted to put on the record that they were modified. As you can see, the architectural style was struggling. In fact, it was struggling so much, one of the DRB recommended showing picture books to the designer so that he can get a better idea of the style. And if you notice in one of the comments on page 2, one of the commissioners says, too much needs to be done to approve this project. It's not the staff's job to just finish the design. The city is not a design studio. Project goes beyond what we traditionally have mandated to approve this project. Are we now going to back down because we don't want to deny it? So as you can see, even with all of these concerns, the project was approved with 10 significant conditions, which the staff was now directed to implement. Since then, there's been 2 stop work orders, one on February 20th and one on February 21st. We're still not clear what those were, and we hope that staff will provide that information. As of now, if you've driven by the house is completely gutted. Work does continue. We're not sure what got approved, what isn't approved. And that is why the community is so concerned about this project. Now, I must say, the Director of Planning, Hassan Agani, did email me and very kindly said that they're monitoring the project very closely. But quite frankly, just from the information that I was able to highlight, you can see that we really need more transparency on this project. Because while this may be considered a test for the urban design team, there's too much at stake for the community at this point. Thank you for listening.
Lawrence Calfine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, and staff.
I'm here also on behalf of the Northwest Glendale Homeowners Association, and I'm a resident of North Pacific Avenue. Due to the situation that Tammy just described, many...
Your name, please.
Lawrence Kalfayan, Kalfayan. Many of our neighbors and our Northwest Glendale Homeowners Association board have a number of questions that we request that the council direct the staff to address. And some of those questions are as follows. First, why did the staff submit the project to DRB for approval before significant design issues were resolved? 2, why did DRB disagree so significantly with the design approved by the staff? Does the staff have the resources to adequately handle this project and projects like it that have multiple conditions attached to them? The staff is pivotal to the function of the design review process. Third, why did DRB ultimately approve the design after the second hearing if significant issues remained unresolved? Does the two-hearing process that we have now, does that two-hearing limit really work? Are staff and DRB uncomfortable with the idea of saying no to a project when they know that disapproval after the second hearing means it's back to the drawing board for the applicant, who will then have to start from scratch? We feel that staff and DRB commission members must have the backbone to make difficult decisions and stick to them. 4, why is unapproved work repeatedly ignored with no apparent consequences to the applicant? The council should instruct the staff to draw some lines and enforce the conditions that were imposed by the DRB. 5, despite repeated inquiries, we have received no answers to whether the neighbors were properly notified. I live less than a block from the subject property, and we did not receive notice at our home. Did the staff implement the DRB's final conditions? Are the conditions requirements that have to be complied with, or are they mere recommendations or suggestions? Is the applicant complying with DRB conditions as construction continues? Who on the staff is responsible for verifying this? Are inspectors enforcing the conditions and recommendations? 6, why is code enforcement left to the neighbors? 7, is the new design process, design studio concept, fatally flawed? Who's in charge of the entire process? Who is responsible for seeing to it that all conditions are enforced? And who on the staff is accountable to answer these types of questions and to make sure that all conditions are met and enforced? We wonder if the project is simply out of control. Our neighborhoods represent too significant and substantial an investment by all of us to ignore or dismiss these issues. This particular corner, as Tammy mentioned, is far too prominent. Therefore, we ask that the council direct the staff to supervise this project far more closely, to provide us with detailed information as to exactly how they plan to monitor this project and enforce the conditions, to diligently enforce compliance with the conditions imposed on this project, and to prepare a full staff report responding to our concerns. Thank you.
We'll make comments after oral communication. Yegor Pagosian.
Yegor Pogosyan, Շուրջ 10 տարուց ավել է ապրում եմ 227 Նորթ Ադամս շենքում։ Իմ առաջի հարգի հարևանը նախագծով նախատեսված տարածությունը, կանաչ տարածությունը մի մասը ոնչացրել է, տնկել է մրգատուծարներ, որոնք առողջության համար վնասակար են։ Ստեղծում են միջատներ, տարբեր տեսակի եւ թույնավորում են, ասենք, կարող է տունը էլի այդ մժեքները ճաշի մեջ կամ ասենք որևէ սնտամթերքի մեջ մտնում են եւ հագասանիտարական վիճակ են ստեղծում։ Ես խնդրում եմ ձեզանից վերականգնեք նախագծով նախատեսված կանաչ տարածությունը եւ մեղավորներին ենթարկեք պատասխանատվության։ որոնք նախագիծը խախտել են առանց City Hall-ի։ Նախագիծը միայն իրավունք ունի ուղղելու, ճշտելու City Hall-ը, ոչ թե անհատ մարդիկ։ Այդ կամ բան։ Եթե հարցեր կա, խնդրեմ։
Yes, if there's any questions, and I'm assuming there is, but
I'd like after, at the end of oral communications, maybe someone can at least provide a synopsis of what he's saying. I mean,
certainly.
Okay, I mean, we have Armenian speakers that are coming, and non-Armenian speakers don't know what they're requesting, so maybe at least a synopsis of what he...
We could take down his information also and contact him for service.
Thank you. Next is Maricela Torres.
Hi, good evening. I'm actually here with Irene Muñiz. So she'll go ahead and she'll start with our presentation.
Good evening, staff members. My name is Irene Muñiz, and we're here representing Glendale Bears Youth Football and Cheerleading Organization. We're an organization that help youth ages 6 through 14 through sportsmanship, through a sports program, which is football, and for our girls is cheerleading. We've been in the city of Glendale for 40 years. This actually is our 40th year anniversary. And we are sanctioned under San Gabriel Valley Junior All-American Football. We follow their bylaws, their rules, their regulations. They have been in existence, I believe, maybe about the same 40 years. We started when their organization started. We are open to Glendale residents and surrounding areas. We feel like we help the community as far as keeping our youth occupied in some kind of sports activity. I'm really not too prepared to do this. I've never spoken like this before, but we do help anywhere from 250 to 300 cheer and football players. And really, I just want to give a little brief description of our organization. We do have a board of directors, and that includes our president. This is Maricela. She is our vice president here. She's going to speak with you in a little bit and tell you a little bit more about us. But I just wanted to give you a brief description of our organization. Thank you.
Okay, once again, my name is Maricela Torres. I'm the vice president for the Glendale Bears. The reason we're here is, unfortunately, obviously, it's known that a nonprofit organization is primarily, especially in this time, really hard to fund. Unfortunately, we just recently, our trusted treasurer left with our money, which was equal to $32,000 plus. For an organization, and as you can imagine, it was really hard last season to actually have one. And luckily, thanks to our parents and our volunteers and some parts of our the community, we were able to have our season. But unfortunately, we are still in the hole, about $14,000 plus. And this includes fees that we have to pay to the San Gabriel Valley Junior All-American, as well as other fees, uniform for the children. We also have to check our equipment because this is tackle football. We have to check their helmets, their pads, make sure everything's safe, as well as insurance we do provide for the children in the community. Oh, yeah. Our permits, I'm sorry about that. The permits, we do have our home field, which is Hoover High School. So we have our home games at Hoover High School, and we do have our practice field, which we also have to pay for our permits at Glendale High School. So like Irene mentioned, this year is our 40th anniversary, and we would hate to have to fold our season at this particular time. Our children deserve it. especially since we do serve, like Irene had mentioned, 250 to 300 children and families. So at this time, we would like our organization to be considered for any type of sponsorship or contributions to our organization to keep our league going. So any amount would be gratefully appreciated. Our youth are available for anything from neighborhood cleanup. We do wear the Glendale logos proudly. You'll see our children around wearing their jerseys as well. We have always on their shirts Glendale Bears, and like I'm telling you, they wear it proudly, and so do us as staff. We constantly do. So I do have a letter that we are currently sending out to the local community in Glendale to help us out as much as possible so we can keep this league going. So if there's any questions, we are available to provide any kind of proof or answer any questions you might have about our organization. So at this time, I'll hand our letter.
And we make comments and questions after the. We'll have a seat.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Francis.
Robert Milano, followed by Margaret Hammond.
Good evening, Mayor Quintero, members of the City Council. My name is Herbert Milano. It was not my intent in speaking tonight about issues other than the financial issues. It is my intent in the coming weeks to be more involved with regard to areas of the city budget, in those areas that are of significant concern to me, which are the increasing cost of our utilities, the difficulty and the inability of many people in South Glendale to meet that significant cost with regard to the utilities. But from time to time, I encounter an obstacle of which I need to speak during oral communications. And even though the public, many members of the public know that I was not a supporter of Mr. Frank Quintero for City Council, nonetheless, in past years, I have been supporter of many other individuals who have served as mayor. But irrespective of that, I have been treated with courtesy, and the public has been treated with courtesy. And Councilman R. Najarin is an example of that. We differed significantly with many issues, but yet he was always courteous and pretty much apprised of the Brown Act and other laws that allows us to participate in this process. So the fact that I did not support your candidacy, Mr. Quintero, I would like to receive from you, the courtesy that should be afforded any other member of the public that comes before you with issues that are relevant. In the past few years, and should I say especially since I bought my building way back in 1987, I bought it at a time when there were many Armenian immigrants coming into Glendale, a significant number. There were hundreds of buildings being built at the time. And many of those immigrants did not have automobiles. At the time, you could build a building with one or two parking variances. It allowed for the cost of the building to be less, and it made the buildings a little bit more affordable. But during those times, we did not have the type of problems that we have today. As more and more buildings, multifamily buildings, are built with those variances, eventually gets to the point where we reach a turning point where there is no more on-street parking. And that was not the situation when I bought my building back in early '87. The quality of life of many of these neighborhoods is deteriorating significantly. The situation today for many of these residents is significantly worse than it was 4 years ago and 8 years ago. Today, I try to figure out a way that I can provide some type of recreation to my tenants, kids, and the kids of the neighborhood that don't have the availability of parkland that other areas of Glendale have. And so I speak to you and come to you precisely to make you fully aware of those issues. The fact is that oftentimes I feel that I need to bring this up with enough frequency so that you stay apprised of the problem. Councilman Yusefian allowed us to have about $1,200 from his campaign fund so that we could put some of these kids at the YMCA. Last Friday, I found these kids at 5:30 p.m. playing basketball and running their skateboards and making all kinds of noise, making it a little bit more difficult to rent the vacancies that I have. And in my heart, I cannot tell these kids, shoo, move away, go someplace else. And I said, what happened? How come you're not at the Y? By the way, I also included some of my funds to basically assist in the process. And I found out at the Y that after 5:30 p.m., they need adult supervision. So these kids cannot go and play basketball as they so much want to do without an adult being present at those facilities. So as such, without a public park and basketball facilities, these kids have no place to go. And I don't have it in my heart to come to these kids and all the time basically trying to, shoo them away from the area that is very noisy, where they use part of the building as if it were a basketball court. So we have issues about lack of parks, lack of on-street parking, facilities and roads that are deteriorating, and other issues having to do with the fines that we have to pay or that the tenants have to pay, because oftentimes there is just no place to park. So oftentimes the guests wind up paying tickets because they overstay their stay, or if they have an extra permit, the extra guest eventually winds up paying penalties as well. So the quality of life has deteriorated, and nobody's speaking for them. And so I come here before you to basically express those issues. And I like to be accorded some courtesy in that regard. And it is my hope that you have a very successful year, Mr. Quintero. I like you as a person, but sometimes, power can be intoxicating. Thank you very much.
Margaret Hammond.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, staff, and audience. My name is Margaret Hammond, and I have a couple of things I want to say. Number one, on the way here, I had one of my favorite records. The Beach Boys were doing California Girls. And I thought, yeah, man, I turned it up and I'm rocking along, and I love that song. I was a great rocker, believe me. Anyway, and I thought, yeah, California, we gals here do set the bar. I think not only for maybe America, but all over the world. I know when I was taking foreign exchange students, all of them wanted to come to California. And I think we have set the bar over and over. And in Glendale, we've proved it over and over. We belong to a lot of groups who raise a lot of money. I don't know how many millions. From all our different groups, our different social groups and scholarships, things over and over that we do. So I think it's wonderful that we have a woman on the council. I don't think we should just go in terms of you being a woman, but sometimes women do have a different way of thinking sometimes that men don't approach it the same way. So congratulations. And the other thing is, of course, as I say, the California Girls set my mind to thinking, in their bikinis and whatnot. And I thought, yeah, man, I remember. I used to wear those back then. Then the only trouble, and look at Era's going, oh no. I'll bring a picture. Or would that be pornographic? Maybe I better not.
Hope not.
I'll be in trouble. Anyway, one of the things that I think is great is this idea of the bicycle rides. I think that's terrific. I don't know about them along Maple. There isn't very much room for paths along there. But I think to get people to come to our city, I think this could be terrific. And especially to go around and visit our jewels in our city, which I am always so proud to have been a part of saving so many of them. I am not even going to list them. I just have had 50 years of a wonderful life. But I would like to see our river walk get going, and it would be wonderful if the bicycle paths could somehow, join in with that river walk, that park that's over there that's not being used. I believe Joanne Hedges brought that up, and that if it were possible, we could and have meeting places there. It would be wonderful for everybody to come. And the other thing is, I wanted to ask, how long will that Colorado work take? I use Colorado all the time. And will it be done before Christmas? And the other thing is about parking. Believe me, I know where I live. I say it over and over. Unfortunately, a lot of the buildings were built. I mean, some of them, in 1925, they didn't even have one car. So we're looking at people that have 2 and 3. I have my next door neighbor has 6. And, parking only on one side of the street, and they only have parking for 2 cars. So, it's murder. So I do think that parking is a big problem in the city. And I don't think any more variance should be given to anybody for short parking. I mean, to short them on the parking spaces. We've been doing it for years, and it's catching up to us. I mean, it really does affect the quality of life. I know in my apartments, they say to me, the only trouble is if we have any visitors, where do they park? On the street? There's nowhere to park, day or night. The auto dealers, their people come over, the employees, and park on Louise Street. And so, there's never anywhere to park. It's unbelievable. So I do know, and yet, when I bought those apartments, I didn't even have assigned parking in the back. I mean, people just park, so you can imagine, what a big change it is for that area. The congestion is bumper-to-bumper parking, really. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any comments from the City Council?
If you want to start at this end, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Will the ladies from the Glendale Bears come up and let us know a little bit about your program? If you can tell me, you must be ready to do the sign-ups, aren't you, for the fall season, and where they can sign up and how they can, young boys or girls who are interested in participating in the whole thing, just tell us a little bit about that.
One thing I didn't mention earlier that I really wanted to express upon is that we do check our participants' grades. Same thing, I believe, in high school, it's done. They have to have a certain grade point average. We do them when they first sign up, and we'll talk about our sign-ups, which are coming up, and towards the end of the season, because some teams will go on to the playoffs. So all our participants, cheerleaders and football players, need to keep at least a 2.0 grade point average. And we do, at the end of the season, at the championship games, give out patches for players or cheerleaders that have a 3.3 grade point average or more. And also, once our players are into high school, their senior year, they can apply for scholarships, which are provided by our San Gabriel Valley Conference. And everyone can submit to them as long as they have played 2 years in an organization like ours. Thank you.
So, sign-ups.
As far as sign-ups, we just recently had our first sign-ups in March. Our next sign-ups are actually this Sunday in front of Glendale High School. Once again, it is open for any players from the age of 6 to 14. So it'll be on this Sunday from 10 to 2 in front of Glendale High School. And we basically have one each month until July.
Thank you.
Mr. Starber?
And if I can, I assume the police have been involved in the matter of your treasure?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I mean, everything has been done that could be done already.
Okay.
If you don't mind staying, I'd like to talk to you after the meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Sounds good. Thank you.
I'm done.
Ms. Friedman?
I'm still learning. Now I know. Technological issue. I wanted to commend the women from the Glendale Bears for the work they're doing for the community. When I was campaigning, I talked about a lot of different ideas with the community, and one of the ideas that people were very interested in was the idea of having a board or commission that supported our nonprofit groups and our service groups. And I would like to agendize that so that we can have a discussion with the community about whether a board like that is something that we need to help assist groups like yours and other groups in the community so that you can draw on other service groups and other nonprofits to assist you with your mission. And I hope that you can find the help in the community that you need to keep your program going. In regards to the Northwest Glendale Homeowners Association representatives who are here, I share your concern with not only that particular property. I'm not going to speak about that because I don't know enough about it to comment on it, but I have, as a design review board member, on occasion felt pressure with the shorter hearing time that we have now, to approve projects with a lot of conditions that in the past we wouldn't have ever given to staff to approve. So it's something that I'm willing to take a look at and to see whether the new procedures, which I think are working very, very well, whether they do need to be tweaked. I think it's something that we should look at. And I have a question for the mayor, a point of order. I definitely appreciate wanting to run a good meeting. I do hope that we can find a way to accommodate people who rush here late from work to try to speak on a long issue so that they can still get to speak if they come in after we've begun. I was thinking of things like the cell tower issue where we had testimony for hours and people were still arriving late. So,
right. Well, let me tell you this, Ms. Friedman, that the habit has been for certainly the past couple of years where we have a discussion going on and then a number of cards keep coming in, so we never really get to the end of it. So what I'd like to see is if someone wants to speak on an issue, they turn the card in, and obviously you can make exceptions, but I don't want to see the same habit of people coming to the podium. I mean, there have been times when the discussion is almost over and all of a sudden we have 3, 4, 5 cards coming in. So that's what that comment was about. That's it?
that's all.
Okay. No? Okay. I would like to have some idea of what Mr. Pagosian was talking about this evening, either Mr. Najarian or...
Mr. Pagosian could not stay, but his issue was regarding a green patch in the apartment complex where he resides and a planting of, I believe, a tree, from what I gathered, that is, he believes, unsanitary. It's attracting vermin or pests. I did take his telephone number and I'll forward it along to the city manager's office for them to follow, or the appropriate department. In this case, it would be Neighborhood Services or Public Works.
Okay, thank you. That's it? Okay, well, in response to Mr. Milano, be treating everyone the same, and I'll be treating everyone in a fair manner. But getting to the issue of that particular comment concerning the parking and so forth, in 1987, I was heavily involved in the city of Glendale with various immigrant groups, and believe me, Mr. Milano, everyone was driving in 1987. All I was trying to point out was that the type of building that you own specifically ruined the quality of life in this city. So to have you continually coming here and talking about quality of life issues and parking and so forth, all I'm saying is that it was your type of investment. You were the type of investor that kind of ruined the city of Glendale, because that particular street, if you drive down it, you still see a few single-family homes, a few garden type of apartments, and then finally there's this type of apartment built in the 1980s, which pretty much ruined Glendale as far as I'm concerned. Then in terms of wanting to apprise me of the problems in South Glendale and so forth, I came to work in this city in 1976, pretty much, and I spent the next 25 to 28 years working with people who were unemployed, people who had been laid off. I volunteered and helped put together so many nonprofits. I don't remember that many, to tell you the truth. It's been so long, but the GYA is one of them. So I just did multiple social service type of activities in the city of Glendale for 25 plus years. But I never saw you, Mr. Milano. I never saw you in any of those nonprofit endeavors in all of those years. The first time I saw you at the podium was when we had the issues on rent control. That was the first time I saw you, and you've basically been here ever since, and I've been listening to you for years tell me, who spent a lifetime working with the unemployed and with low-income people in this city, telling me what's right and what's wrong and so forth. So I just wanted to point that out. Like I say, I've been listening for quite a while, and I felt it was time to respond. And I think that's it. Any other comments?
We have some new business.
Go ahead, Mr. Najarian.
Mr. Hagani has a comment.
Mr. Mayor, if I may respond to some of the questions that were raised about the design review process, specifically about this case, without getting too much into a discussion because it's not an item that's on the agenda. I must just say a couple of things. One is that the design review, if you would like to see an assessment of whether or not two meetings or more is something to be discussed and to evaluate that, we'd be happy to do that. However, by this case, I must say that this is a case that was approved with conditions, and it has not been signed off by staff. And as I mentioned in my email to Ms. Raelier, staff is monitoring this and is working with the applicant to meet the conditions of approval. And if they do not meet the conditions of approval, we will not sign off on these on the approval, and they will have to go back to the design review board. In this particular case, it's taking perhaps a bit longer than the neighborhood would like to see, but the truth of the matter is that the applicant is saying that they're working on it, and our staff is visiting the site as often as possible to see what the progress is. And whether or not 2 meetings are sufficient, that's a different story. I must say, this was a change for us to hear maybe somewhat of a complaint that staff may not be as hard. For the first 6 months of this process, I was getting at least half a dozen calls a day from applicants who are telling me that our staff was being too difficult to work with, and our staff was telling them, we will not recommend approval unless you make these changes, etc., and was being upfront. So that has started to change. We're getting applicants who are being a little bit more cooperative because they've noticed that the design review boards have been pretty consistent in terms of what staff anticipated and what staff said they would probably confront at the design review process. We must also add that we do not approve anything before it comes to the design review board. We only bring in the applications if they are coming before the design review board. That means they could not be exempt from design review process. So there is no approval before the design review board. There is only an application. And I'll be happy to speak about the specifics of this case with Ms. Raelier or the Glendale Northwest Homeowners Association. We really appreciate their participation. They are great partners in design review process, and we look forward to continue working with them. This application has not been approved, and it's only under the process. Thank you.
When you say it hasn't been approved, they're building right now. Are you saying that they're building a plan that hasn't been approved, or are they building according to an approved plan, but there's additional parts of it that haven't been approved?
They're building, they are supposed to be building according to a plan that was approved, and our staff is recognizing that they're not meeting the conditions, and our staff is going back and sending them back to make changes because they're not meeting the conditions. And we've told them that we will not sign off on the final design review board approval unless they meet those conditions. And if they don't get a sign-off from us, they will have to apply for a new application and go back to the design review board. That means they did not get their approval. So that is where we're at with them. We're working with them to have them meet the conditions, and if they don't, we won't sign off.
Mr. Starberg.
Well, just an observation, and as my office does in these cases, because we generally don't know the whole picture at all, we'll meet soon with Mr. Hagani and the building staff to get a clear picture. With the council's in the past expressed concern about projects that begin construction while we then find them out of conformance and get into this process, it seems to me we'll be looking at what steps we can take to, if indeed they are out of conformance, to halt the construction while we then make sure that they are building in compliance with the conditions, as opposed to allowing building to continue while we then work through what can be a rather lengthy process. So we will focus on that specifically when we meet.
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments? Motion to adjourn.
No, there is new business.
Mr. Najarian.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the matter entitled Sequoia Insurance Company versus the City of Glendale, Superior Court Case Number EC 044112, be compromised and settled for the full and complete sum of $30,000, and the same is hereby approved and accepted, and further that the Director of Finance is authorized to issue a warrant in said sum for delivery by the City Attorney upon the execution by the plaintiff of a dismissal with prejudice of all claims in the above entitled matter.
I have a second.
Yes, I'll second that.
Roll call.
Council members Draymond?
Yes.
Friedman? Yes. Najarian?
Yes.
Weaver? Mayor Quintero?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Mayor, I also have a motion. I move that pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.1A5, Yvette Nukian is hereby approved and appointed as a Deputy City Attorney, Code Enforcement for the City of Glendale, and further, that a written copy of this motion be transcribed, certified, and delivered by the City Clerk to the Office of the Civil Service Commission of the City of Glendale as and for the written statement required by Article 24, Section 5, Subsection 2 of the Charter.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Council members Draymond,
Yes.
Friedman, Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver, Mayor Quintero.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.